You are tuning in to the Pros and Cons, the Centralist podcast brought to you from the heart of West Virginia. Now, here is your host, the new young face of hope, because the old one was lousy, Assad Daria Khan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Pros and Cons podcast. Today we have a wonderful guest and a wonderful giveaway. That is right. Make sure to stay tuned until the end of the video, where we will be giving away a Pakistani katana sword. That is correct, a Pakistani katana sword. This is a beautiful replica sword that is wrapped in red wrapping. So even though the sword is a bit dull due to the sword being used, you can only win the sword if you are 18 or older. I really hope if you're listening to this, you are 18 or older, or your parents have a lot of explaining to do. The sword can be used during the COVID purge, to hunt if you're good enough, and to cut your mustache during quarantine. You can also do some real-life fruit ninja, but I'm legally obligated to say that might not be a good idea. But nevertheless, make sure not to go away. Before we get to our guest, let's get to the weather. Our weather is very interesting, I would say. We're having a pretty cloudy day today, high of 59. But next week, man, do we have some surprises. So this weekend, actually, it's going to be sunny with a high of 55. But on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday next week, guess what? We got snow. That is correct. We are reporting from the Weather Channel some snow with a high of 51, 49, and 53. I can't make this stuff up. That's the sad part. But now, let's get into our next segment of Politics Today.
Politics Today.
So today, our special guest is running for the 11th Senatorial District. She is a registered nurse with a master's in nursing, and she served as the House of Delegates for 6 years. Her education includes Davis and Elkins, Aldous and Broadus, Marshall University, where, I don't know, we'll ask her if she had a crush on Matthew McConaughey. And she completed her doctorate in 2009 at Capella. So please let me welcome Denise Campbell. How are you doing, Miss Campbell?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I am doing excellent.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. And one thing I would like to say is we know that this is a very tough time, and just would like to thank all of those frontline workers and the nurses, the doctors, and the emergency service, the law enforcement, those that are essential workers that are out there keeping our communities alive and providing us with services that we need, and I can't thank them enough.
Yes, and thank you so much. I am a healthcare worker. My father is a healthcare worker. You yourself are a healthcare worker, and thank you guys for standing up through this havoc. And a lot of hospitals, I've been looking around, are they're setting up their tents. People are coming around doing testing and putting their own lives at risk for the safety of others. So I thank you so much. And speaking about COVID-19, how are you coping, Ms. Campbell, with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, whenever we sort of were first into this a couple of months ago, it changes on a daily basis, and I think the unknown is, I think, what is fearful for all of us, and knowing that we don't have control of it. And, I am doing my very best to stay at home. My son, he is out of school, and we're really trying to adjust to trying to be that teacher also, and really, really, really recognize what an awesome job our teachers do. And, it is a different way of life. And I have to admit, I have a son that lives in New York City, and he lives in Brooklyn. And, as a mother, I am scared to death. First thing I want to do is I want to get to New York and take care of my son. And I know there's a lot of people who, we have family members not only in our state of West Virginia, but in other states. And it is very stressful. And here in West Virginia, the Appalachian culture, we want to be with our families and we want to be with our friends, and so it's a challenge, but it's how I choose to look at it is I may not have a lot of control, but what I do have control over, which is my social distancing, washing my hands, wearing a mask, protecting myself, protecting my neighbors. That's what I'm doing.
And we all have to take the right precautions as well. And I mean, unless you really have to go out, it's best just to stay home and watch some Tiger King if you're into it, or watch anything else. Have you watched Tiger King? I'm just now getting started on that series. And
I have not. It's really amazing. I had, I teach in education, so I seem to always be grading papers, studying for a lecture, so this time really has given, I think one thing for families is it has given us an opportunity to spend more time with our family and have family meals around the table. So I'm trying to choose to look at the positive of what's happening, but I think we all just really need to try to relax as much as we can and try to tell ourselves that we will get through this, but it's all of us working together to be able to get through this.
we all are in it together, that is for sure. So like I said, you're running for the 11th Senatorial District. How is your campaign going, and has anything had to change due to the COVID pandemic?
Well, the campaign, of course, has had, the COVID-19 has had an impact, of course, because typically when you're running for office, you're out and about meeting people, attending events and things like that. And of course, that is not happening right now. So the emphasis on, social media and things like that are about the only option that people who are running for an office have. But we know that it is very important, that we have our elections. And but at the same time, people's lives are the most important thing. And I think we just adjust as for running for office, but just need to connect with people in ways that we can, and if there's things that we can do to help in our community that are within the guidelines, then that's what I'm trying to do. So it has been different, and sometimes I'm a type of person that I like to be out and about active, and so you sort of feel like you're sort of sitting idle to a certain degree, but it's just an adjustment, and you just have to try to make the best of it, and it is different.
It is, and they're now saying that, or a lot of people are saying that things might not go back to the way it is or where it once was. And I think we will end up going back to kind of the way we were. But it is going to take us some time to readjust, because right now we've lost a lot of people. A lot of people have lost their friends, their family. So it will take us a little bit of time, but I think we will get back to a point, because we're a very, very strong nation, and we'll pull ourselves back together, I think.
Right, and I think, a lot of people, you've heard that comment, that, we really need to pay attention to history. And, some of the events that happen regarding public health and contagious diseases, those were things that happened, hundreds of years ago. And, that were things that we faced before in the past. And I think we need to be sure that we sort of review what has happened in the past to look that, we can survive this, but it's going to take all of us to be able to do our part. Because, of course, I watch the news, and I think I've tried to really, one thing that I have made a change in is I will only listen to it for just a short period of time, because if you listen to bad news all the time, it does affect your your feelings about things. So I want to be knowledgeable and I want to listen to what's going on. But I do feel that this is serious. And if there are people out there that think this is a joke and that people are, blowing this up, one death is one too many for me.
Yes.
And, in West Virginia, as of yesterday, we've tested over almost 13,000 people in West Virginia. We have a total of 483 positive. We've had 4 people from West Virginia die. And, as a nurse, I've taken care of patients on ventilators. That's not a walk in the park. That's not being hooked up to an IV in a hospital bed. And, I just want people to understand the seriousness. We've heard story after story of somebody who, within 48, 72 hours, everything just totally changed, and they were walking, talking, next thing you know, they're on a ventilator. So, I don't want to take that risk, and I don't want to see any of my family or friends do that, because when something like that hits home to you, your family, your neighbor, you tend to have a different perspective on that. And, I don't want that to come near any of us. So I just really want to strongly encourage people, follow the guidelines. You may not see someone sick, but if we don't do that, we are likely to see more people sick in our communities and in our state.
Guaranteed. And not only that, but we have to all work together on top of that. And also, a lot of people right now, I don't understand why, but I've been seeing a lot on Facebook where people are wanting to be bigoted against Chinese, and they're wanting to ban everything that comes in that is from China. And they just want to ban China altogether, and they're saying that they purposely did this, and that, like you said, it's a hyped up or like a hyped up cold, or that it's not, that it's being blown out of proportion. And people are taking to the point that they're going into violence, and people from China or even just from other Asian areas are being assaulted and physically attacked because people think that they're the ones who are causing it. So, which is horrible. So we can't just randomly go out there and start attacking people. We have to all stand together and help everyone and pull ourselves together. That's the best way to do it.
I know. And when I hear you talk about that, the word stereotyping comes to mind. And, I teach my students, when we work in healthcare, we take care of everybody. We take care of everybody, no matter where they come from, who they are, what their age, what their background, what they've done. And we as Americans, I would hope that we could be kinder. And, violence doesn't solve anything. Violence does not solve anything. And, polarizing things does not make things better. We do need to work together. And you know what? It's easy to point the finger, but, I believe last night I was having trouble sleeping. The storm was bad outside. I was watching TV, and I just saw there was a new study that came out that there is a study that is saying that it really came from Europe, from how the people, the effect on New York City. So, we are so early in this, and your father knows how important data collection is, and we're just in the data collection stage. For us to we know that the virus started, that's where we heard of it from, was China, but it's all over other countries as well. So, we don't have enough facts now to form opinions of who did what.
I agree. And with that, I do want to tie into, like you were talking about how you're teaching students and you're telling them, to make sure to take care of each other. Has your experience as a nurse and as a professor, what would you say about the nurses that are fighting COVID-19?
nurses that are on the front line and nurses that are even support. And I mean, they are the ones that are putting their life at risk online to take care of all of us. And, they are priceless. And people who go into nursing, people who choose to be a nurse, they take that when they say, I'm going to nursing school, I'm going to go and I'm going to help people. That's what the whole purpose of nursing is. And, our nurses, I can remember when I was a nurse, that was when AIDS was, a really, one of the really big issues. And I worked in a setting where I worked with people who I knew had AIDS. And, but I knew, it's what I committed to, and it's who I am, and I am going to help you any way I can. And that's what our nurses are doing out there in the front line. And just to steer off a little bit, our small community hospitals, and with the COVID-19, and as people who realize what has happened in healthcare in the last 10 or 15 years, we've moved from an inpatient model to an outpatient model. So we have a lot of people who are employed at the outpatient. And since we have really, have cut that down because we don't want, of course, people in the hospital and things like that unless it's absolutely necessary just because of the risk to everyone. But, we have a nursing shortage in West Virginia, and we have a nursing shortage in America. And, I just hope everyone really appreciates the hard work that the nurses do. But at the same time, I'm hearing, I belong to the state nursing association, was a past first vice president, and there's places that are laying off nurses. And I know there's a lot of people who've been laid off, and my heart goes out to everyone who has been laid off and who have lost their jobs, companies that have had to close down and things like that. But I teach my students that I want you to be the most caring nurse you can, and I want you to be the one that stands up and will lead the fight to take care of patients no matter who they are.
Yep. And I mean, like you said, my father and I both are healthcare workers, and we see it. We just now started doing drive-through testing, and it's hard to make sure that. And I absolutely love our staff that is going up and putting themselves, right in the front line, and willing to take that risk to make sure that people are safe. And I mean, that's all nurses all around the world right now are doing this. And
right, and those nurses, I've talked to nurses that work in the emergency departments and in the ICU, and they worry when they come home. Will I be bringing something home to my family? And they take the risk for themselves, but they take the risk for their families as well with this situation that they're in. And, my husband works in healthcare as well. He's been an employee of Davis Memorial Hospital for over 35 years. And I know some of the situations that he's been in. And, he's scared and, is worrisome. And I think those that work in healthcare, I know they are the brave, but I am sure that they have grave concern for themselves and for their families.
I remember one of my nursing professors, because I did a short period of nursing before I switched to healthcare administration. One of my nursing professors always would talk about how one day she came home and she thought she was completely fine. She had her scrubs on, and she went in and she gave her son a huge hug. And because he had run up to her, and they just, hugged like mom and son. And she almost actually killed her son because she had seen a patient that she didn't know had, I forget which disease it was, and she ended up passing it on to her son. And she was very upset, and but her son recovered, and he's very healthy. but it's one thing that you do worry about. It's even something as I worry about. I mean, I know I'm blabbing my mouth in the back of a recording studio, but at the same time, you do worry of, like, my father coming home and he possibly bringing it, and the staff that goes home to their families. And one thing that I do want to mention is that you cannot catch it from a dog or a cat. So a lot of people are thinking that if you run up to if your dog might end up carrying COVID-19 or something like that, and people are taking their dogs to the pound and trying to get rid of them and their animals to the pound. And it's completely not true. And, just love on your animals. They're actually the best right now, because as you're sitting in quarantine, you can sit with them and cuddle them and, watch Tiger King with them, I guess you could say. So they're
Right.
the best right now.
I think you bring something up that's very important, is that we all know that Facebook, social media is not where you should be getting your evidence-based information from. I know I teach my students, if you read it from the National Enquirer and you read it on Facebook, is that fact? Is that where we take our practice to? No, you should be checking the CDC website. You should be checking with medical journals, not some story that you saw on Facebook or some posting of somebody who's just trying to make up a story and scam people and try to see how many likes they can get or views they can get. So I would just caution everyone, be an informed decision maker. The CDC is a wonderful website that answers a lot of questions, and those are that is our institute in America that does the valid research. And, I would just caution people, please do not take everything that you see on Facebook, social media as facts.
And not only fact check it, but also check the grammar. Some of the times I see memes being shared, and just the grammar is so horrendous. Sometimes I wonder, how did it even pass? Like, how did it even, as you were reading it, you thought, man, this actually makes sense? And then someone shares it, and then it just starts down the line. Like, one of my favorites was a person shared, this was a couple of years ago, a meme that said, Halloween is now going to fall on Friday the 13th this year. And it just started down the line of, oh my God, it's happening on Friday the 13th. This is going to be an amazing time. But it didn't occur to anyone when the actual date of Halloween was. That just went over everyone's head. Everyone, for some odd reason, thought it's on Friday the 13th.
Were they transversing the numbers? October 13th.
Yeah. And that was a huge thing for a while. And every single time I saw it, I'm like, how did this pass?
Oh my goodness. Being able to connect with people through social media, I think is really amazing. But, anything, they have the positives and negatives. And, I just want to caution people that, as we do have, there are many people who have a lot of downtime, so to speak, right now, because many people are at home and not going to work and things like that. But be very cautious that you don't get brought into that negative information that's out there that's false.
And constantly sharing it for other friends can see it and then say it's false. But all right, let's tie us into something. Well, I guess it is pretty funny to talk about horrible people sharing horrible posts. But let's talk about your experience as a legislator. So what are some things that you have learned that will help you in your running for the 11th senatorial district?
Well, I think one of the things that I learned, which, you have to know your community and the people that you represent. Because, when you go to Charleston, in the House of Delegates, there's 100 delegates. And in the Senate, there's 34. And you have to be able to work with people. And, some of the things that I would really like to change is this hatred and animosity, and the idea that, don't you dare work with that person from the other party or whatever. I mean, that is why we are in the situation we're in. We have got to work together. We all may not agree, but we are stronger working together. And one of the things I found, and that was one thing that I tried on a daily basis for the 6 years that I served in the House, is let's work together. And, I'm a middle child. I have tried to get people together from the day one. And that's one thing that I really believe, if everybody went to Charleston with that idea, wow, what a difference we would make.
And not only Charleston, but just the whole entire world.
Right. And one thing I do want to let people know that, I am running for the 11th Senatorial District, but, I'm not about Washington, D.C. I'm not a Washington, D.C. politician. People, stereotype depending on what party you're associated with. That's not me. I am the person who I want to represent the people, not a party. Because I don't agree with everything that my party, so to speak, has a platform for. And I'm sure, on the other side, we all are individuals. And that's a reason why we have multiple representatives. If we all were supposed to say, well, whatever the leader tells us to do, we all have to fall in line. So why would we pay 100 people or 34 people if nobody could bring a different idea to the table and say, hey, in rural West Virginia, this is how it is. And that was one thing that I tried to do. So, because a lot of policies and laws that are passed, we have 55 counties here in West Virginia. Are all 55 counties alike? Do we all have the same issues, same concerns? We talk about with what has happened with our children at school and with me teaching my students online. Broadband is, we have got to have that in our state, and we have got to be fighting for things that make West Virginia better. And not try to do, well, let's see, this state did this state did that. I think we should do that here. You know what? We need to be looking at what the real problems are and address those. We need to support small business. Small business is what West Virginia is. But you know what? I mean, you know how Denise can go off on her tangent. But you know what? Some of the things that I think embarrass me is the fact of how many homeless students we have, children, how many are in foster care. Shame on us. And then to know that when we don't have school, that we have to worry that these children have no food. That should not happen. I'm sorry. But there's many things that we need to tackle. But one thing I have found out in Charleston is, you do have to fight for your place. You do have to fight for your people. And, one thing I can say is I would see people take a walk. And if you don't know what that is, that's when you're in a committee meeting or you're on the floor and there's a vote. And it's something that, you're not going to make everybody happy. 50% of people aren't going to be happy with you. Maybe 50% might like. And I've seen people that they voted for them to go down there and vote for them, and they will get up out of their seat and go to the bathroom or go somewhere so they don't have to hit that button. I never did that, and I will never do that.
So you can't hear it right now, but I'm currently playing a applause sound because what you just said, was absolutely perfect and something that everyone needs to consider whenever they are running, and even the people that are in leadership right now, they need to consider.
Well, and I just have a passion for trying to make life better. That's who I am. That's why I'm running. I don't have any special interest group, or I have some kind of selfish reason. All I want to do is make life better and do the right thing for the people of West Virginia. And West Virginia, the people and the culture here in West Virginia are just totally amazing. And we all know, that old saying, divide and conquer. You know what? We have got to stop being divisive. We have got to work together, and together we can achieve so much more. instead of fighting. I mean, it's, you know, that's one of the things I wish everybody would say, you know what, when I go to Charleston, whoever are the people who are elected, is I want to work together and I want to do good. And if you go there with those two things in mind, you will be a success.
I agree. And not only that, so you have experience as a legislator, but you also have, like we were talking about before, experience as a nurse. Are you going to be bringing anything interesting into or on the plate in healthcare?
Well, you know, I was in an interview in Somersville just a couple of days ago, and that was a question similar that was asked to me. And, you know, of course, the new legislature will be going back to Charleston, you know, the very 1st of January. And I think where we are with the COVID-19 and what all has transpired, I think that will be some of the issues that we will have to tackle depending on if you know, healthcare related. And one thing I will say is we have got to support our community hospitals. We need our hospitals, and I want to do whatever I can to keep those in our community. You know, my dad, before he passed away, he had to go so many times to Morgantown. I mean, depending on where you live, and you know, even this senatorial district of 7 counties, most of these counties, we have small community hospitals, but the next place they have to go is going to be Morgantown or Virginia. Those are hours away drives. Our elderly people cannot. That is just so taxing on them. But we have got to support our community hospitals. And one thing else I will work very hard on is our public health. We have underfunded public health for years. And look at the people who are in charge of the pandemic is our local public health. And we have had them on a shoestring budget. And we have got to be sure that we put our money where it needs to be and not give it away so freely.
I agree.
And, you know, and the other thing that I would really love to see is because, you know, we talk about the school system, and I talked about, you know, the children who are hungry, the children who are being raised by their grandparents, even great-grandparents, children that go from house to house, they don't have a place to live. The teachers and the schools have a different environment, and I really believe by increasing the number of social workers and nurses that can be support to help these children with other issues they have, because if we don't, you know, people who have been to college and taken some psychology courses or whatever, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we don't have food and shelter and feel safe, it's going to be hard for us to learn. And so I would love to see us be able to put some extra support in there so that we can help our children in all areas so they are successful.
I agree wholeheartedly. I do want to plug in here as well. I, of course, have my questions that I am asking, but and we have a couple questions submitted on the comment section, so I will answer or say those in a couple seconds. But I do want to say, if anyone has any questions, we will answer them all, and just put them in the comment section. So we are, like I said, we already have one, so we will hit that in just a second. But I want to get to my last question, and that is, how are you different from your competitors?
Well, how I know I'm different is I have the passion, I have the experience, and I want to do this because I want to help people. I'm not all caught up in the title. You know, the last 2 people who held this seat resigned. I guarantee you I am going to stick with you, and I listen to people. I don't listen to party. And I can give you an example. When I was in a house, you know, a lot of people think when you go to Charleston you have all these secretaries and everything. Well, you don't. I go into my office and you might have 100 messages. You are the person who takes the 100 messages off. And if there was a piece of legislation that was controversial or whatever, and I would have people, I'd have emails and phone calls, and I would have a tally sheet. And if I had a certain percentage of people that told me, do not vote for this, or yes, I want you to vote for this, I listen to the people, and I am not afraid to stand up and say, no, this is not what my district wants. I don't go with what does Denise Campbell want. I go with what do the people who sent me down here, what do they want me to say, what do they want me to vote for. And you know what? I have. There's a lot of times people would say, we have no idea how Denise is going to vote because, there's certain things that go around and you have this whip person who goes around and tries to whip people into shape saying, oh, we need you to vote this way. And you know what? I made people mad on both sides, because I was like, nope, that's not what I'm hearing from my people, and I am not doing that. So I want you to know that what makes me different is I listen to the people and I try to do what the people say. Now, have I made everybody happy? Absolutely not, because there's very few issues that 100% of people agree on.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, let's get into our comment section. So Miss Moore asks, West Virginia deserves a better quality of life. How will you help bring that to our state?
Wow, I totally agree with that. And, I am very compassionate. My grandfather was injured in the mines, and that was way before there was any type of help at all. And I see how they lived in poverty and how my dad was treated. I have a son with special needs. And you know what? That's what got me in politics, is I realized that, there are people out there who are crying for help and nobody's listening. And you know what? That's what I wanted to do, is I want to make the quality of life better. And I think we have to treat people equally. I saw something on Facebook, just like we were talking, but there was a study that was done that says the people who have disabilities and the elderly are actually being discriminated against when it comes to testing for the COVID-19. You know how furious that makes me? Every life is important and every life has value. And you know what? We do deserve to have a higher quality of living and being able to succeed. But I think we have to have leaders that understand that. I think you have to have leaders that live at the everyday level of the people from West Virginia. I don't come from a family of popularity. I don't come from a family of money. I come from a family of people who are hardworking, who are like, I want to help my children. I want to make their life better. And, I will do anything I can to help people who feel like they're underserved.
That sums it up perfectly. Again, we'll take any questions that come in on our comment section. But that actually completes my questions. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, we talked about the COVID-19, and I do want to be sure that I mention this, because I think this is one thing that we need to keep in mind as West Virginians. We live in a rural state, and this district is our rural counties. But West Virginia, because we have a higher percentage of people over the age of 65, we have a large number of veterans, which thank you to all of our veterans of serving us. And we need to take care of them, but we need to realize, because we have coal miners who have black lung, we have people with COPD, we have people who are diabetic. We are not the healthiest population in West Virginia. Some of the things we rank number one in are not things that we want to rank number one in, and a lot of them are healthcare. So that's why I just caution people, be very, very careful with this COVID-19, and please follow the guidelines, because, West Virginians are at risk somewhat greater because of our population and our health status in West Virginia.
Beautiful. Well, now I think let's get into our giveaway. So I have a question and an answer already. So the giveaway today is a beautiful Pakistani katana sword. It is, you have to be 18 or older to win this sword, which I think all of the people that listen are 18 and older. So at least I hope so. But we also have another question that I just saw came in from Mr. Kerner. So we will answer that right after we get done with our giveaway, I promise. But let's get the giveaway just out of the way. And yeah, so it was donated by Main Street Antiques for all your antique needs. A beautiful shop. Sadly, they're closed right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But whenever they open back up, they have beautiful, beautiful stuff inside. And if you happen to like alcohol, all different types of alcohol, they also have a nice wine shelves, all different types of beer, and all different types of stuff for any need. So there you go. So again, I will say it is a beautiful replica Pakistani katana sword in a red wrap. You can use it for anything. Do some Fruit Ninja, real life Fruit Ninja, whatever you would like to do. So our question today is, and you have to submit it in the comments section, your answer in the comments section. What was the first feature-length animated movie ever released? Again, I'll say that again. What was the first feature-length animated movie ever released? Preferably, try not to keep on Google. Just give it your best shot.
Okay.
All right, well, we have a 3-way tie. Now, that does not mean I will cut up the sword in 3 ways. The correct answer was Snow White. So the tie was between Mr. Newman, Miss Hatfield, and there was someone else, I thought. I guess only 2. 2 people got it. So I'm not going to split it up in 2 ways. So we're just going to ask another question. So this is for Miss Hatfield and Mr. Newman. So get ready, because the first person who answers, and if it's another tie, which I hope it's not, if it's another tie, then I'll just have to keep asking questions until we get through it. All right, so now's a movie quote challenge where I will say a famous movie quote. No, I'm not going to. Well, I'll try to do an impression of it, but I'll say the movie quote, and then you guys have to guess what movie it is from. You do not have to add, or do not have to guess the year the movie was made or anything else, just where the movie is from. So, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. That is the movie quote. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Make sure to text in or comment in your answer, and the first person who gets it, we'll give them the prize. We have another tie by Mr. Newman and Miss Hatfield. So I'm going to do one final question. I know I'm putting you guys through your paces, but I have to, it was perfect. Literally with my internet connection, you both commented, and at the same exact time. Not even a second before. So you guys are right on it. But we'll do another movie quote. So I might not get this perfect, but we'll see. So the movie quote is, "Here's looking at you, kid." What movie is that from? Here's looking at you, kid. All you have to do is guess the movie for Mr. Hatfield or Mrs. Hatfield and Mr. Newman. Whoever gets it first, and I will accept the first one that pops up on my comment section, no matter if it's, no matter what my internet connection says. The first one that pops up on my comment section will get that prize. Again, the Pakistani katana sword donated by Main Street Antiques. Congratulations, Miss Tammy Hatfield. You got it. You guessed the correct answer. Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid. I would show it up on the screen. However, I don't want to get a copyright strike. So you got it spot on. Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid. I will be texting you here shortly with how you can claim your prize. And there's no secret stuff that you have to worry about. Most likely, we will deliver it to you in our proper CDC attire. So don't worry. And everything is cleaned off and properly sterilized as well. So you don't have to worry about getting anything from the sword. So I'm going to answer our last and final question, and then I'll take us out. So Mr. Kerner asks, any ideas on how we can bring about not just economic changes to break our bondage to fossil fuels, but how we can make the cultural changes that are needed also? How do we make people comfortable with that change?
Well, I, of course, am a very firm believer, and I believe we have a responsibility to educate people. And if people do not have the education or are not given the information and all the facts, it's very easy to just, form an opinion. And I think in order for us to see any change and try to get our, the citizens and our state and even in our country, no matter what the subject is, but I think we have a responsibility that we have to educate. We have to educate and we have to provide information and we have to answer questions. But first and foremost, we have to stimulate those questions because sometimes people don't know that they need to ask questions and that there are answers. And I think educating people and giving them the opportunity to ask questions and being respectful to each other, but providing that education, I think, is so key to any. I know in nursing we talk about how do you when you want to implement change, what do we do? You have to provide education, and you have to provide what are the pros, what are the cons, because we know there isn't any situation or policy or anything out there that is perfect. And then we know that there's even the best thing you try to do, there are unintended consequences, but we need to be sure that we are providing accurate information and stimulating people to ask questions about that.
I don't know if you realized, but in the middle of that sentence, you actually said the name of this podcast itself.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, the pros and cons. You actually got it.
I know. Hey, and there you go.
Yeah, that was perfect. Well,
that's a great question. Yeah, and I think that's we talking about because we know as our world changes, and I know just working in healthcare and seeing all the changes. I mean, I've been in healthcare for 30 years, from a receptionist in a doctor's office to a registration clerk to a nurse to an administrator, and I've seen change. And sometimes change is hard. We all like to be in our same little routine and do things different. But as things change, we as a society and we as a state, we have to be sure that we're not afraid of change, but that we do it in the correct way, and that we I just think that whether we like it or not, what is that saying, that the only person that likes change is a baby with a wet diaper.
Yep.
And I think that and I think that's really true, because I mean, sometimes when I drive and I'm going to go somewhere else, sometimes I'll be halfway to work and realize that's not where I'm going. So we're just we're creatures of habit, and so I think we have to work on that we would be open to new ideas.
I agree. Well, that wraps up our broadcast. Is there anything else that you would like to mention?
I just want to say thank you so much, and I just really appreciate everybody out there working hard, and my I'm very concerned, of course, about our small businesses and people who've been laid off and our economy. But I think if we hold tight, do what we should do, get all of us get through this together, that, West Virginia will be back on track, getting back to work. And so I wish everybody well. I wish everyone to be healthy, and please follow the guidelines.
Excellent. And with that, it marks the end of our live broadcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and during these rough times, to always take care of each other, for that is the only way we will get through this all. Announcer, take us out.
Thanks for tuning in to the Pros and Cons podcasts. Check back daily for more episodes. And remember, if everyone around you is an asshole, maybe you're the asshole.